Hey guys, welcome back to my YouTube channel. Now, I know you're looking at the YouTube thumbnail and the title and you're like, summer. Girl, summer's over, you're too late. But summer doesn't end for a whole nother week. It doesn't end until the 22nd. So, technically, it's still summer. And technically, this video still falls into summertime and it still counts. I know I'm looking like I'm in my fall vibes already, but no, it's still summertime, okay? So we're gonna be doing summer stuff. But I really wanted to try to fit this in last minute because I know I kind of have this theme going on where I've been making season themed foxes. I've done winter, I've done spring, and now it's time to do summer. So let's get started. Also, if you like my content and you like my crazy self and you end up liking this stuff, subscribe. Okay, bye. To start off this project, we are going to be doing some resin casting. This is my go-to mold whenever I want something angular and mystifying looking. I just had a really good sculpting day and I'm so glad that I molded this head. And now, as per usual, I wanted some really nice fancy shots and to just look like I knew what I was doing, but I was also out of cups, so I had to resort to just an old Starbucks cup. And let me tell you that I learned very quickly on why that was a horrible idea. And so as per usual, everything starts off looking so nice and ooh, she's a professional, she knows what she's doing, and then the chaos ensues like it normally does. But I didn't know that until I started pouring, and you might be able to tell why this wasn't a good idea. Let's watch. Oh, this is a horrible idea.
It was at this moment that she knew. She f***ed up.
Indeed it was. Indeed it was. A lot of resin was lost that day. But these things happen, and thankfully it was a very easy cleanup. Just the whole process was just like, why? Well, stop spilling everywhere. Oh no. Before the resin cured from all my panicking, I made sure to insert the armature that I was going to be using because the saving grace is that once it's cured, it is locking that armature in place and I don't gotta drill no holes, glue anything together, it just locks it in place. Oh, look at me just trying to roll my troubles away like that. I didn't just spill resin all over that mold. Nope, nope. Once the resin was cured, it was time to fight the mold to get the resin head out. That thing was stuck in there. But with all that, like, chaos, I'm surprised at how well this head turned out. Usually there's some type of void or air bubble that I have to fill in, but there was none. I'm a little sus about that, but hey, I'll take it. The one thing I didn't plan for very well when I sculpted this back in the day is if I ever wanted to add horns to this, and so I need to go back in with my Dremel just to make a little bit of a wider space between the ears just so that I can anchor the horns onto something, because otherwise it's way too small of a space. Once that was done, it was time for some ASMR armature time. Or ASMR armature time. I still have some leftover beans from the Dark Crystal Fox video, and so I figured instead of making myself suffer and sculpt 4 separate paws, let's just use those. To attach them to the frame, I just fill the void with hot glue and insert the ball and sockets and hold them until they are cooled down and it's locked in place. It's super easy and super effective. Once cooled off, it's time to work on building up that body, and for that I always use quilt batting, and it just comes in these big long sheets because it's made for quilts, and then I'll cut it into strips and wrap it around the body over and over until the body is built up to the thickness I want. Now, keeping in mind not to go too thick because whatever fabric I'm going to add is going to add additional thickness, so I want to make sure that I keep that in mind. I also wanted to keep in mind that as per all the other Guardians that I've been doing, I'm adding a battery pack inside for lights, so I have to make sure I definitely keep in mind the body thickness and how that's going to look when the battery casing's inside. But like I always say, if you want chunk, chunk, chunk boy, you get chunk, chunk, chunk boy. If you want thin, thin, thin boy, you get thin, thin, thin boy, okay? We support all body shapes and sizes here. This is like chunky lanky. I don't know what kind of body type I was going for. It was long, but has some meat on the bones. Like I mentioned just a moment ago, every season Guardian I've done so far has lights. And I'd like to think for the summer Guardian that this is like fireflies like in the body and like around all the foliage on the back. I don't know. I just know I like adding lights to things, and I always try to find some rhyme or reason for it, but I just wanted to add lights to things. Come on. I'm popping in just to say, hey, if you've been thinking about doing a thing, go do the thing, and then I believe in you, and to go drink water. Okay? Okay, I love you. You're wonderful. Okay. Once that's done, it's now time to add fabric over that body, and I chose a nice sunflowery yellow. I really didn't want to just do a standard typical red fox, but I was really struggling with what colors to do for a summer themed fox, and I figured, well, what about like a sun-kissed version of a fox? So instead of like oranges, we would do like a yellow, like a sunflower. And instead of black, we would do brown. So like it's a fox that spends so much time in the sun and walking around that it's like literally sun bleached. And I thought that might be like a good compromise between there. I also realized I talked like all over what I normally tell you with the sewing, but I'm not good at sewing. So I feel like I'm not the best to explain what I'm doing because I don't really know what I'm doing half the time. So sorry. Once trimming is done, I go over everything with a pet trimmer just to shape up the body a little bit better because it is a little bit more fluffy than I'd actually want. And we want a long, elegant, there's some fluff, but you know, you can see all my angles, who is she kind of vibe. But like I mentioned, I'm using a pet shaver for that, and I highly recommend that for anybody who actually wants to make at least a couple art dolls. And you guys have finally told me enough times to get a thinning shears that I invested in some, and I have no idea what I'm doing. I do like how it gives a very natural ending to the cut fur, but like I have no idea what I'm doing, so just give me a few chances to figure it out. I also added some fur fibers to the edge of the resin casting just so that it flowed a little bit nicer into the fur and was a little bit more of a seamless transition. I wanted it to essentially look like trees were growing out of the fox's head, and for that I'm going to be using driftwood. And there's just so many different varieties and pieces in this batch that I got that I could have really big massive horns or really nice intricate little horns, but come on, I think you all know what I went with. And because I have no chill, I even took it further by lengthening the horns with extra pieces of driftwood, and I just hot glued them together. I don't have a problem, it's fine. I also used hot glue just to temporarily secure them onto the fox's head. And I have to say, they just, like, look at them. They just give like a nature goddess, I'm a Princess Mononoke forest spirit vibe, and I absolutely love it. And because, again, I also have no chill, you know, I added lights to it, because, yeah. I don't even have a reason. I added lights to it. I don't need a reason either. Because I didn't trust the hot glue very much, I also took some epoxy sculpt and just smushed it all over the face just to make sure that those driftwood pieces were going to be locked in there. And then I just textured the epoxy sculpt just to make it look like it was just the resin cast and it was still all seamless again. Before I airbrushed the body, I figured it was probably a good idea and responsible idea if I masked off all the white first. And then I went to town airbrushing with my dual action gravity feed airbrush, which is just fancy talk for a pressure controlled airbrush. You put the paint in the top. But I didn't want to go too hard with any colors. I didn't really have any plans outside of the colors that I'd already chosen. I just wanted to essentially give some body shading. Fur is, it's just like one consistent hue the entire way, and like an animal wouldn't have that natural consistent hue. You would see variations and like sun bleach spots and darker spots, and so I was just trying to give a little bit more shading to the body so that it looked a little bit more visually interesting and was a little bit more realistic that way. It was also very important to blend in like the brown fur to the yellow fur so it wasn't like a obvious cut between the furs, and it like blended a little bit better. I also added green where I wanted all the foliage to be, but I completely covered that, so like, don't even worry about it. It's finally time to go in and paint the face. I did a very similar, I guess you could say pretty much identical way to how I painted Bumblebear's face, where I painted it a nice yellow that matched the fur, and then I gradually did darker and darker browns, wet blending them together towards the muzzle. And it looked really good on this piece, and I looked really good on Bumblebear, so I was just like, how can I not? I don't care if you've seen me do this before. It looks really good, and I like it. Once I had the base layer done, I just went over everything with a lighter hue of each version of the color to give a nice dry brushing, just to make sure all those details popped. I struggled a bit with what eye color to give this guy because technically the last Spring Guardian had green eyes, but they were more of a lighter yellow tinted eyes, and I figured since summer is more of the time where things have stopped blooming, everything's just green and growing, I decided to go for a nice deep green because I thought that would look nice, and it turns out I was right because I do think it looks very nice. Also can't forget the feeties. I go over that with a brown that matches the fur. And while yes, I should remember to do this before I sew everything and put everything on, I never do, so I always have to go back and do it. And then of course, we cannot forget the little toe beans. I gave them a nice dusty pink, and when it dried, it looked a little bit darker, and it looks so nice and just gave that nice pop of color that I was wanted. So it's a little flash of toe beans, little cutie cuties. The claws get a nice tan color rather than black, just to keep on that sun-kissed bright theme, trying to keep from using black in this piece. And then I make sure to go over the feces with Duraclear Soft Touch varnish, just to make sure that they're as scuff resistant as possible. And I almost forgot, we gotta make his eyes nice and shiny and glossy with a thin layer of UV resin. While I loved the driftwood, I didn't like how desaturated and gray they kind of looked, so I just went over the entire pieces with some watered down brown just to make it a little bit more warm hued, but I didn't want to really do like a heavy wash because I still wanted to keep those natural light and dark colors. And then it was time for my favorite part ever. That's right, we're gluing a random assortment of foliage, leaves, flowers, and all the little goodies all over this body. But for real, gluing random assortments of leaves, flowers, and just little trinkets on an art doll is like my favorite thing ever to do because I don't have to have any rhyme or reason for it. It's just wherever something feels right, I will place it. It's just fun, and I don't have to be a perfectionist about anything, and I just absolutely love it. So I'm pretty much just gonna let the rest of this play and let you guys enjoy me putting everything on. To make the driftwood look more like a live tree, I found these like little miniature like creep vines, and I just glued them all over, and it just gave so much, I don't even know like so much what, it looks so good. It looks so naturey and just so drapey and like regal, and I'm ethereal. And then I went and added even like more little bushes onto the driftwood to make it look like it was leaves, and added little mushrooms, and it was the perfect final touches. And with the last final touches, this piece is done and we can get a look at the final montage.